This is Viterbi Voices.
Coming to you from the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering.
We're here to give you the inside scoop about research, classes, student life, and so much more.
All of these shared from our students, faculty, and other members of our USC community.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back into another episode of Viterbi Voices. As usual, I am one of your hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma. I'm the Executive Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
And hi, everyone. My name is Emily Powis, and I'm a senior studying biomedical engineering.
And returning back to our podcast here, a regular on the show, Chris, why don't you reintroduce yourself to the audience?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris, and I'm currently a senior studying civil engineering with an emphasis in building science from Woodland Hills, California.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Chris. Welcome back. And how has your new year been?
It was good. I was able to do some traveling and see some family that I haven't seen in a while. So that was nice. And it was very relaxing because I had a pretty busy fall semester. So it was nice to kind of get some R&R.
Break. Yeah, nice to take a break for sure. Absolutely. Well, good. Well, welcome back. And I hope you're doing well. And tell us all about this episode you bring to us today.
Yeah, so essentially it's a kind of a roundtable civil engineering and an environmental engineering department discussion because even though it's a pretty small department at USC, I feel like it's actually an extremely broad field that not a lot of people really understand what we do and what we learn. And I feel like there's so many different directions you can take. There's so many different tracks or emphases that you kind of take at USC where you kind of hone in on what you really like and what you really want to focus on. And I feel like it was important to kind of have a discussion about what those different emphases learn in their classes and what kind of career paths they have in the future. So I thought it was great to kind of have a discussion between all of them and figure out why people chose them so that if other people can identify with that when they're at USC or even just any other kind of civil engineering major, they can be like, oh, that's something I want to do in the future and just kind of learn more about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that civil and environmental engineering is often either misunderstood or overlooked. I think it's commonly reduced down to skyscrapers and bridges. And so
I agree with that.
But it's so much more. And I think a lot of the stuff that civil and environmental engineers do is actually the stuff that no one wants to think about, which is a lot of the stuff like anything that you don't see in civilization.
Exactly.
Anything we take for granted, right? Anything that has to do with water involves civil and environmental engineers, and we all need water. So, I mean, one of the most, I think, important disciplines, of course, all of them are important, but I think it's the thing that we really need to make sure that students understand a little bit more and make sure that it's an option for students when people are not really knowing what they want to get into. So thank you for bringing this discussion. Is there anything in particular, before we get started into this whole thing, and then we'll see each other on the back end of this, is there anything you want to let everybody know, like what they should be thinking about as they're going into this? Like for those that are like really excited about civil and environmental engineering, or maybe those that are maybe a little skeptical or not sure what they're going to get out of this?
I would say that I think that you should keep an open mind when you are entering into the major, because I feel like we also notice this a lot when, we talk to prospective students and we do these info sessions that a lot of people, some people don't know what they're getting into when they come into an engineering major. Some people think that they have this really strong idea of like, oh, this is exactly what I want to do. But I would say my advice is to keep an open mind, because you can even see it from some of the people I talked to today. A lot of people started in one emphasis and ended up not liking it and switching it to another. And some people even switched 2 or 3 times in and out of emphases, because as you take the classes, you start to understand what you develop a passion for. And I feel like you grow so much in college, and your passions and what you want to do with your life and career are going to change.
Absolutely. And the one thing I do want to note from the outside looking in is that now if you're a prospective high school student, you're looking at our application, you're going to hear a lot of talk about emphases, like building science and structural and water resources, and the environmental emphasis versus the environmental degree. really just absorb it as possibilities, but don't worry too much about it right now because those aren't even on the application. What you'll see on the application is either a civil engineering degree that says any emphasis or an environmental engineering degree. And that's just what you're applying into. It's where you want to start. But you'll note, as Chris just mentioned, students switch between all of these. And the idea of emphases are things that you will start to decide as you start to take classes, as you start to engage a little bit more and start to decide, regardless of what you learn, you actually like it, whether it's right for you. And that's something you're not going to really understand until you get into these courses. So sit back, enjoy this little journey through civil and environmental engineering, the Sunny Sunny department, and we'll see you all on the other side.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Viterbi Voices podcast. My name is Christopher Manny, and today with me I have Tad, Ashley, Manny, and Elyse joining me, and we're going to be discussing the different aspects of the civil and environmental engineering majors at USC. So why don't we start off with introductions from everybody, including major, hometown, and year. So, Tad, do you want to start us off?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Tad. I'm a junior from Ridgefield, Connecticut, and currently I'm in the general track of civil engineering.
I can go. I'm Ashley. I'm a senior studying environmental engineering, and I'm from Chicago.
Hi, everyone. My name is Manny Salgado. I'm a senior studying civil engineering with the emphasis in construction.
And my name's Elyse Pollock. I'm a senior from Los Angeles studying civil engineering with a structural emphasis.
Great. Thanks, everybody. And to reiterate, I'm Christopher Manny. I'm a senior, and I'm also civil with a building science emphasis. And thanks, everybody, for joining me. I kind of wanted to kick it off with a little discussion about what civil and environmental engineering is at USC. So does anyone kind of want to give me what they think is like a broad definition for either of those majors?
I can talk about environmental engineering because I feel like no one really knows how to explain it. And I think I'm still learning how to explain it. But I'd say overall, environmental engineering is kind of just combining math and science to tackle challenges related to just anything regarding the Earth's natural resources, which usually are water, air, and sometimes soil. And then just kind of approaching the problems that result from negative human environmental impact. That's probably how I describe it overall.
And similar to Ashley's point, even the definition about civil engineering is so broad that I'm still learning in my senior year what exactly it is. And so it really has to do with designing and maintaining like the built environment and everything the public deals with on a daily basis. So this includes like sidewalks, pipelines, buildings, freeways, you name it. Civil engineers kind of do it all.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like similarly, Elyse, I feel like I'm just recently trying to understand what civil is also. Same with environmental too, because I feel like they are super broad. But I noticed that they both, for the most part, deal with just structures that relate to human health and human life. And there's so many of those. And that's why I feel like they created all these different emphases within. So I kind of wanted to pivot towards those kind of different emphases, or rather lack of emphases, and what that means for your education as well. So why don't we maybe start it off with Tad, because I know, Tad, that you're in the general track of civil. So if you could explain a little bit about what the general track entails. And then also I know that you maybe switched from emphases into the general track, so maybe why you did that.
Yeah, of course. So right now I'm in the general track of civil, but I've also spent at least a semester in environmental, in building science, and structural too. So right now I'm in general because I feel like since civil engineering is so broad, as Elyse has mentioned before, there's a lot to really learn about. There's a lot of different industries to learn about within civil engineering. And I think that through the general track, I'm learning a lot of different courses in civil that touch upon things like water resources, like structures, like design, like sustainability, environmental engineering. So I feel like by learning through general civil, I've been able to expose myself to a lot of different industries, a lot of different realms within civil, as for how I can apply like my knowledge and what I want to do in my career. because through the first couple years, it's still hard to figure out like what exactly what exactly I want to do in civil, what exactly I want to do with my degree. So by taking all these classes, by taking a broad analysis of civil engineering through my 4 years here, I think that it's been able to help me to learn about what different industries I like the most, what different industries I feel like are most important or feel that I can like apply myself most into. So that's why I feel like, for at least for me, in my opinion, the general track has been this option for me so that I can see all the different types of civil, all the different emphases, and see which ones I like the most.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And then kind of on the flip side, I know that Elyse, you're a structural emphasis. So did you come into USC as a structural emphasis or did you end up joining it after your first year?
Yeah, I actually came into USC with a structural emphasis. I thought going in that I would like it, and I'm glad that I have. But really, with the structural emphasis, it just has allowed me to take really only 3 additional classes compared to the general track that are focused in structural engineering and will prepare me for graduate school and future career as a structural engineer. And so these classes are, vital to learn, which is why these emphases exist. But overall, structural engineering just entails more design of beams and columns and the structural elements that carry load throughout the building. And so I found this a really unique experience and has been really beneficial to my studies. But going off of what Tad was saying, even the general track provides so much diversity, which my friends have been talking about, all these unique classes that they've been able to take as electives throughout civil engineering that I sadly have not been able to take. So that's also sounds a really cool option as well.
Great, thank you. And is there any reason that you gravitated towards structural? Is it something that you just kind of found an interest in when you're taking some classes, or is that like maybe an interest you had before you started college?
I heard that it was more orientated towards math and like unique problem solving. And so going in, that seemed really intriguing and I want to learn more. And over these classes that I've taken, it really is unique to individual problems and projects that each different case when designing a certain element may require additional work and knowledge than the previous case if you designed the same element. And so I find that really intriguing and something that like I want to learn more about and do in the future. So yeah, I think going in, it was interesting just to see all the possibilities that it can apply to.
Great, thank you. And then turning it over to Manny, I know that you're a construction management emphasis. Did you start as that or did you go into that during your time at USC?
Actually started as a general civil, like Tad. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And I explored all the emphasis during my first year. And then I actually switched over to structural for a bit. And I realized more what structural was, and it wasn't really my cup of tea. It was calculations and designing. But I wanted to get more into something that was more like allowed me to see things on the field and more like hands-on work. And so I gravitated more towards construction and having an internship and doing competitions for like organizations on campus. I realized that I really liked construction because it allowed me to have more like, because construction, in my opinion, is more focused on like being a business, like being like there's more business risk in construction. And that's something that's in my overall future goals is having a business. So learning about construction, I've taken classes on contracts and law, or even in my classes, I've learned more about how a business operates. And so I think that's really important for for anyone, even civil engineers, to learn more about the business aspect of it and not just about learning about physics and how the numbers work, but it's also important to see how building these elements can work in society, and how there's also like different aspects to civil engineering than just the numbers.
Great, thank you. So you switched out of structural into construction, and when did you do that? Did you do that during your sophomore year or your junior year?
I actually was structural like up to my junior year, but it's really easy to switch from structural to construction because there's only a few classes that are different. And I switched after I did my internship. So that's how I realized what I really wanted to do, because I wasn't too sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then I guess I can touch a little bit on my emphasis also. I said that I'm a building science emphasis. And essentially what you do with building science is really focus on the civil aspects of designing and constructing a building. It's kind of a holistic approach. It's like the construction that goes into a building and the structural engineering, and then also the architecture. And that's what's unique about it, is that you also take architecture classes, studio classes, along with the structural engineering classes. And I came into USC with that emphasis because I wanted to get a little bit more creativity and design with my also very mathematically and STEM related degree. So that's something I kind of switched into or came into USC with, and I haven't left it and stayed with it as well. And then I guess kind of to pivot more into environmental engineering, Ashley, I believe that you don't have any emphasis within environmental engineering. I was wondering, are there even any emphases within environmental?
Yeah, that's a great question. So technically, as of now, there's not. I would say like unofficially, there's kind of 3 paths or 3 groups of classes within environmental engineering, which is water, air, and energy. And so right now, USC, most of the environmental classes, I would say, fall within the water sector. But one of the professors is working on kind of making more an air path. And another one's working on energy. So I would say environmental engineering is growing a ton. And in the future, there might be different kind of emphasis. But as of now, it's just environmental. And you get to kind of explore in all 3 of those areas, which is nice.
Great, super cool. And is there one of those 3 that you are gravitating towards the most?
So coming in to USC, I'm gravitating towards water. And then to be totally honest, I realized it's really chemistry based, and I'm just not the biggest fan of chemistry. So I absolutely love my energy classes. I love the professor. I think it's just so interesting because it's constantly changing, like the different energy sources we're using and like the whole idea of green energy. But kind of like Elyse was saying, I did have more of a math brain. And so throughout my time, I questioned whether I should move into civil, just civil general or civil environmental. And ultimately I stayed with environmental, I would say, because it's hard, because I went back and forth a ton. But I love the professors in environmental, and I just really loved the topics that I was learning about, even though it necessarily wasn't my strength of math and science. It was a lot more science than math.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And then you also touched on there is a environmental emphasis within civil, and we couldn't have someone here today who was that emphasis, but I guess maybe you can kind of answer this question: is what is the difference between the environmental emphasis for civil and an environmental engineering major?
For sure. I have a good amount of classes, I would say, with people who have a civil major with environmental emphasis. I would say the major difference is once you get, I mean, like as an underclassman, from what I understand, environmental engineers take a few more of those core science classes, like to take 2 semesters of chemistry and I think an extra one of biology compared to just with an environmental emphasis. And we take a lot of water classes as upperclassmen in environmental, whereas if you just have that environmental emphasis with a civil engineering major, you'll be taking more of those structural and less environmental class. It's basically split with more of a focus on civil, so you can kind of like dip your toes in the water of environmental without fully committing to those science courses.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And then another thing I wanted to bring up when it came to discussing emphases, and I know that Manny already kind of touched on this, but this is a question for everybody, is that for people who have switched in between emphases or out of emphases, how easy is the process of doing it? And if whoever wants to answer this, could they also kind of touch upon what the process is for switching in and out of emphases? Like, for example, who do you go to do that?
Yeah, I think I can talk about this because I've done it 3 times already. But yeah, it's really not difficult at all, at least for the first half semesters generally, because you start to take the more specialized classes for your emphases starting in spring semester junior year. And so I've been able to do it pretty frequently the past couple of years because most of your classes in civil for the first 2 or so years, with the exception of building science, I think, because you start those architecture classes pretty early on, but you take more general classes the first couple of years. So it's not a difficult process in the beginning. What you just do is you talk to Geraldine, our advisor for civil engineering. Just talk to her about, want to change your emphasis, and then you can just meet her and then discuss your course plan, what classes change, and what you just have to do for class going forward. And it's really not difficult at all. She can just make this change just like that. And I haven't had to fall behind my course plan. I still will graduate on time despite switching so many times. So very, very fortunate. It's a very flexible process. It's a very straightforward process, and Geraldine and the department makes it very easy for you to switch within civil engineering, switch between different emphases, which I think is a great thing too, because again, like me, I'm sure a lot of other students also have difficulty finding what they want to do for the first couple of years. They know they want to do civil engineering, but they're not sure like exactly what they want to do specifically yet. So making it easier, making it more flexible for students to switch within the different emphases to try everything out makes it a lot easier for us too, so that we don't have to worry about falling behind or taking extra classes or having to make up anything. So it's a pretty easy process.
Even though I've stayed in structural engineering throughout my time at USC, without having an internship after my junior year in structural engineering, I really even questioned whether or not I wanted to stay with the emphasis. And so after that experience, it was great to decide what I really wanted to do and confirm that structural engineering was right for me. But even though that was after my junior year, I'm sure if I wanted to switch then, only one class was different from the general track at that point. So that probably wouldn't even put me behind as well.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think that what is great about the different tracks is that, like you both touched on, it is very easy to switch between them. I would say that building science is a little bit of an exception just because the architecture class is so unique and it's really made specifically for the building science majors. And it has a very natural progression because you take a studio every semester from sophomore to senior year. And that does make it a little difficult to switch into building science, not so much to switch out of it. But I definitely think that's what's great about a lot of the other emphases, is that they're not too different from the other civil majors, that it is pretty easy to switch between them. And just a question to relate it more to environmental engineering for Ashley, would you say, when you said there's, the air, the water, the energy, when you're choosing between those, is that something you go to your advisor to, and then you let them know that so that they can tell you what classes to take next?
So basically it's not an official, like you don't have a choice which ones you take. You do have a choice, I would say, on when you take them. Like, for example, I studied abroad, so I ended up rearranging my classes, and Geraldine was so nice and just basically showed me like all the different possibilities. And so in that regard, she was like, you could take both of your air classes at the same time, or you can split it up between your water and air, just to make sure that you don't have so many classes focused on the same thing. But until you do like a grad program that you have to actually pick between water and air.
And then to pivot the discussion a little bit, I kind of wanted to discuss some of the specific classes you've had to take in your different major emphases, just to maybe make the differences a little more tangible to our listeners. So if everyone can kind of just maybe discuss some classes they've taken, maybe some of their favorite or least favorite classes, or classes that really have stuck with them that are unique to their majors or emphases throughout. I can start us off. And it's pretty obvious, but I will say it's our building science architecture studios, especially when you look at the studio I'm taking right now as a senior, because we have to not only do structural calculations that I'm sure Elyse would probably have to do with her structural classes to design a building in our studio, but we also have to do all of this 3D modeling and architecture design with it. So we really have to do both the architect's and the structural engineer's job in one project. And luckily it is a group project, so it's not too much of an undertaking, but that's kind of, it represents this kind of holistic education that building science is focused on, with both like the design and the structure of a building. So that's like a very unique class that I've enjoyed so far taking for building science. And if anyone wants to kind of talk about theirs for their majors or emphases.
Yeah, going off of that, since you mentioned structural engineering, the only classes that we take different are the structural design 2, structural dynamics, and computational structural analysis. And with these classes, structural design 2 is an elective for general students as well. And because everyone has to take structural design 1, most students end up just naturally taking this course. And computational structural analysis is actually a shared class between building science and structural engineers. So it's cool to have this interaction throughout the classroom as well. And then structural dynamics is a really fundamental class for the field. And that is taken in the senior fall. And because you need a graduate degree for structural engineering, this class is really beneficial to get that introduction before you have to take another structural design dynamics class in graduate school.
Yeah, I feel like what's cool is that a lot of building science and structural classes are done together. I know that we've had a lot of classes together, Elyse. I feel like your classes take it a little bit further in the structure than ours do. Ours are really focused on maybe more just like building structure, but you guys, because I think structural also helps you prepare for a career, maybe in even like bridge structural engineering, or more like very heavy structures that require a lot more knowledge related to those. So I feel like take some classes are probably more advanced than us in structure.
Yeah, and definitely it's really that just structural dynamics class that deals with like the heavy civil structures that some people may be interested in, like bridges and overpasses. And so it's cool to get that exposure as an undergrad to really prepare you for the future.
Yeah, super cool. Tad, what are some of, I guess, the classes that you have taken in your general track that probably myself and Elyse and maybe Manny might have not really been taking, because we have these different emphases?
Yeah, sure. So I'm still a junior, so I haven't taken that many of like the specialized classes from the different emphases on the general track. But yeah, going forward, I take a water resources class next semester, so I get like a little bit of a glimpse into that emphases. 2 of those total throughout my entire course plan. I've taken structural design 1, so getting a glimpse of like that little, like the structural track 2. And I started as an environmental emphasis, so I was able to take intro to environmental engineering as opposed to intro to civil engineering my freshman year. So I was able to get a better understanding of what environmental engineering was all about, that class. And then there's a lot of different electives you can take as a general civil major. You have a lot of flexibility your junior and senior year as to what electives you can take. So you can take like more structural classes if you enjoy structural engineering and you want to learn more about it. So I'm taking like structural design 2, like Elyse brought up, this coming semester. because I wanted to learn more about structural engineering. And then I took a couple studio classes being in building science. I was able to learn more about like building design. And yeah, just overall, like, you have a lot of flexibility in your electives, in your civil engineering electives, as to what you can take on the general track. But also through the course plan, you have a lot of variety too in what classes you take. So you take a couple water resources, a couple structural. You have some construction electives you can take, some environmental electives you can take. But there really is a lot to offer in the general civil track, and you get a glimpse of pretty much everything.
Great, thank you. And then Manny, what are some classes that are unique to the construction management emphasis? Because I'm sure that there's a lot of classes that are very different from the civil classes that we've had to also take.
I've taken different construction classes, but I know there's a few others that I wasn't able to take. But the ones that I did take were construction, contracts and law, and construction engineering. Also, I've taken a sustainability in design and construction class. And like I said earlier, these classes aren't really math based, and they're more about learning more about the construction industry and how, like, for example, in the construction contracts and law class, I learned how the different players in construction, or even the players that it takes to build a structure, work together. Like, for example, the owner contracts the general contractor, and the general contractor contracts the subcontractors. And there's contracts between these players, and there's a lot of risk involved, and there's so many different important aspects in construction and between the contracts. And in my classes, like in my other class, construction engineering class, that class was more broad, and it really really taught us all the different aspects in how to prepare to build structure, and how, like, the different methods of construction, and also preparing, such as making a schedule to finish the structure on time. And so there's different aspects, and it's really different from other emphasis civil, and how it's not really math based, but it's more about how really who plays what role in building a structure, and how we can all work together in that aspect.
Yeah, thank you. That's super cool, because I feel like a lot of people forget that even though it is an engineering major, the building industry is just a huge business, and there's a lot of contracts and business and law that goes into it as well. So I feel like the construction management gives you a peek into that, and it's a different perspective on an engineering major, which I think is super cool.
Definitely.
And then last but not least, Ashley, I kind of wanted to ask you maybe what are some classes that are unique to environmental engineering that we really wouldn't get to look at as civil engineering majors?
For sure. I would say it's interesting because, like, when you guys are talking about designing, a structure, like for environmental engineering, we took a water treatment design class, took it last semester, and we were designing it, and we were doing kind of more the construction part of it. Certainly not the structural part, but was geared towards, environmental engineering overall. Like, we're always talking about water treatment or wastewater treatment. And so a lot of my classes, I would say, like water chemistry, I would say is very interesting, very challenging class. But in the labs, we're constantly doing stuff that would happen in the real world. So they teach us about, once wastewater comes through, how do you filter through it? Or if you've heard like of hard versus soft water, it's like, how do you measure the chemicals within the water to determine how hard or soft it is, or is there a contaminant in the water? So that's why environmental, like they say, is so water heavy and so chemistry heavy. But I would say I've loved those classes just because they're always applicable to the real world in a different way. You're not always thinking about the water you're drinking, but these classes make you think of that. Or the energy classes make you think of, when you pass different nuclear plants or solar kind of energy. So it's definitely been super different, I would say, than any other type of engineering, but also really interesting.
Yeah, super cool. Thank you. I think it is interesting how environmental kind of slightly differs in that like it is like the same business or same like general entity of what civil engineers also do. It's just a different, I guess maybe like a different angle or like a different aspect of it that civil doesn't really focus on. So I think it's cool how they kind of like go hand in hand.
Sure.
Yeah, so to move on to the next point, I kind of wanted to discuss resources at USC, and that can be either what's given to us by our department, and then also just any specific clubs that are available to civil as a whole, but also maybe specifically your emphasis. So if anyone wants to kind of touch on different clubs or resources that they're a part of or have been a part of in the past.
A really big organization on campus for construction is CMAA, which stands for Construction Management Association of America. And it's really big on campus because we have a competition at the end of the year for construction management. And being in this organization allows anyone interested to learn more about construction and what it really is, because most things is you don't really learn it in class, like the really specific like plan reading or using different software such as Bluebeam. And being in this, just being involved in CMA really allows you to learn more about construction if that's something that you're interested in.
Yeah, and going off what Manny's saying about CMAA, even as a general civil major, I still think that CMA is a really, really resourceful club for myself because of all the opportunities it provides for like meeting industry professionals, attend information sessions. So you don't just have to be like a construction emphasis or someone who wants to go into construction, be part of that club. And there's a lot of cool opportunities. Even there's a lot of different companies that they bring in, a lot of different companies that we talk to a lot that aren't just construction. There's also like structural companies that they bring in. There's like more environmental companies that they bring in. So there's a lot of different opportunities that open up, not just for construction majors, but also for just general civil or any other emphasis for on behalf of CMAA.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also part of CMAA, and I remember I did do that competition, and that's where I actually got my first internship in construction. So I definitely think that CMAA is a great opportunity to really reach out to industry professionals because it's such an established club at USC. But I know another big civil club we have is ASCE, and I'm pretty sure, Elyse, that you are the president of ASCE. So if you would like to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, ASCE stands for the American Society of Civil Engineers. And it's really great because it combines different design work from each emphasis within civil and environmental engineering. And ASCE has a competition called PSWS, the Pacific Southwest Symposium, that allows you to demonstrate, your knowledge and what you've been working on for the past year. And so the different design teams within ASCE include Steel Bridge, which is more focused for structural engineers. There's Concrete Canoe, which anyone can join all of these, but for Concrete Canoe, it's more focused on structural and construction engineers as well. There's a geotechnical component for GeoWall and even an environmental design team. And so these teams participate in the PSWS and get to compete against different schools within like California in order to collaborate and see which school has the best project at the end of the day. And so, yeah. And ASCE is open for all emphases within civil and environmental engineering, and the time commitment depends on how invested you want to get.
Great, super cool. Thank you. And would you say that ASCE tailors its different those different clubs to the general track, or would you say that there's some that more tailored towards like a structural track based on like maybe like concrete canoe versus steel bridge?
I'd say overall, each design team is really more for the general track, just because everyone, no matter your emphases or background, is encouraged to participate in all of these design teams to really just, find their path within civil engineering. And so that's what's unique about ASCE, is that you're able to try each team with even little background in each field. So without taking a structural class, you're able to participate on the steel bridge team and learn how to, use different programs like SAP 2000 and design a bridge. And then later on in the spring semester, learn how to fabricate it and collaborate with your team. So it's a unique experience where you can go in with little knowledge and then come out with so much learned throughout the year.
Great, thank you. Very cool. And then to turn it to Ashley, are there any specific environmental clubs or organizations that USC provides?
There is technically like a association of, oh gosh, I don't know the name, but it's AEES, which is basically the one that Elyse was talking about, except specifically for environmental engineers. But I would say all of my friends in environmental engineering are part of both the civil and environmental and the environmental specific, because like Elyse was saying, those design teams are super helpful to kind of get a feel for which type of engineering, whether it's like within civil or civil versus environmental. And so I have a lot of friends on the environmental design team because it's a great chance to kind of do hands-on work and see if environmental is really what you like. But I've always loved the fact that like, even though I'm environmental engineering, I can join Steel Bridge, like Elyse was saying. And I'm actually also on that construction team that you guys were talking about. It's really nice how accepting it is that if you have kind of any interest in any of them, you can join them, being either civil or environmental. So I'd say you guys hit the two biggest ones for all of them.
Yeah, I agree. And then a kind of a third one, which is a smaller civil related club that I'm on the e-board for, is EERI, which is Earthquake Engineering Research Institute. And I would say the club tailors more specifically to structural and building science emphases in civil, but it can really, anyone in civil or environmental can join it. And essentially with the club, we have a competition called the SDC, or Seismic Design Competition, where they give us a city and we have to design a high rise in that city. And we both have to like design the exterior of the building, like architecturally. And also we have to do structural analysis and create a model out of wood, which then we take to the competition and they put on a shake table that simulates an earthquake. And we see if the building stands up. And it sounds a lot like it usually is gravitated towards for building science majors, because it's, you're doing both the architecture and the structure of the building, which is kind of what our emphasis is like. But a lot of the times we have structural emphases join and general track as well, because it's just a very cool project. And we have a structural emphasis as our structural captain. And that's a club that I kind of gravitated towards because it's similar to my emphasis, but also I just think it's a really cool concept, designing a high-rise building. And it's a lot of work, but it's really cool because then they kind of, you get to fly out to whatever city the high-rise is you're designing in. So for example, this year, the building is in Salt Lake City, so the competition is being hosted there. And it's cool because it really brings colleges from across not just the country, but also the world too. They do have international colleges there. And I know that a lot of these competitions also bring colleges from across the country, and the competitions are very great experiences for both learning like practical skills that you can apply in your careers, but also to put you out there and meet industry professionals like info sessions and such. But yeah, that's a perfect pivot to the next question, which is kind of discussing career and internship opportunities. That you can kind of answer this in two ways. What are some career and internship opportunities that are specifically for your emphasis or major, but then also maybe what are some career opportunities that you're looking for that are different from them that you can still look at and be involved in regardless. So I can kind of start it off and say that the cool thing about building science is that you can really go in so many different directions, because I have people in my classes that end up going into construction because while we're learning about design and the structural engineering, they're interested in also just how the building is constructed too. And a lot of people go into construction or construction management. There are some people that do go into building structural and go into being a structural engineer. And there's some people that kind of take a middle ground, which is a very smaller, lesser known field called facade engineering, which is kind of a mixture of design and structure for the exterior of the building. And personally for me, I'm as of now going into BIM, which is building information modeling, when I graduate from USC, which is a lot of 3D modeling and understanding the technology that goes into building construction. So it's a very, very broad career potentials for anybody in building science. But if someone else maybe wants to touch on what career opportunities their emphasis has as well.
For structural engineering, the most common path is to become a structural engineer and work in a design firm doing these structural calculations. But it is also common to go to the construction field and become a field engineer. And so I'd say really those two are the main paths. But I'm planning on going into the structural engineering field and working in a design firm as well.
Yeah, I know for construction, it's really common to go straight to work for a general contractor after graduation.
Very cool. Thank you.
But there's also opportunities to work for like a subcontractor or a construction consulting firm. But I know that if you are interested in design and that's something that you would want to do even with a construction background, it's very possible to work in design or working for, public works or any of that nature.
Yeah, for general civil, I've already talked about this before, I think, but like you can really go into anything you wanted or anything you have interest in, whether it's like water treatment, transportation, environmental, structural, like design, all those opportunities are really readily available to you. But I think, Chris, you brought up a good point earlier when you said that even some building science people don't stick with like design, they go construction. I think it shows that like even if you have an emphases that you study here, there's still a lot of opportunities in different industries or different emphases, and you're not just defined by what your emphasis is in civil engineering. There's a lot of different opportunities, a lot of variety in what you can go into in the future.
Yeah, it's also possible to get your undergrad degree in one emphasis and get your master's degree in a different emphasis. And you're just going to have more knowledge on two different, I guess, industries or pathways, and you can choose between either or. And the emphasis you choose in undergrad isn't like, you don't have to do like, you could go on other different paths. There's a lot of flexibility in civil because it's so broad.
And going off of that, even within structural engineering, if you get an undergrad degree within and civil with an environmental emphasis, but then want to have a structural master's degree, it is possible to, like Ashley brought up earlier, design wastewater treatment plants and combine to in future work.
Yeah, sure. I would say, I don't know if I'm totally correct with this, but environmental, it's probably more common to continue going to school, whether it's grad school to, either go more into water or I have a few friends actually trying to get their PhD just because they love research in the lab. And there's a lot of research that is super important now in the environmental field. So that's common. I personally tried working in the lab, and I don't think I can do that for the rest of my life. I would say another big path is working in the water sector, whether it's for the city like LADWP. You can do more structural side, like Elyse was saying about like a treatment plant, or you can be out in the field, taking those samples, making sure everything's working. I personally am just doing a total 180 and going into construction, which I think just clearly shows that like an engineering degree is important, and my classes definitely helped me in the environmental field. But what you learn in engineers, you basically learn how to think, and I can apply that kind of anywhere. So if you can talk about that, in an interview with a construction company, then you really can do a lot of things outside your major after college, which I think is really exciting and kind of nice to hear, because I didn't know that going in. I thought I'd be super limited with environmental, and you are more so than you would be if you went into civil. But environmental engineer, and I'm going to be going into construction, and I haven't taken a single construction grad class. So I think that's sometimes nice to hear.
Yeah, I think that is super cool. I think that, like you said, it really speaks to that. With as long as you're getting this engineering degree and you are part of kind of like the building industry, there's really so many different paths you can take. And I think that's what's super cool about civil and environmental, is that as small as it seems, because we are a pretty small major at USC, I'm pretty sure that, correct me if I'm wrong, but environmental has maybe like 10 to 15 people a year in that general range. And then civil usually has maybe like 30 to 40, maybe 50 max a year. And so they're both very small compared to other engineerings at USC. So they're a lot more specialized, but I feel like there is still so much that you could do, because they're actually very broad industries for people to get into. So I think that's cool that you're doing a 180, and that if you found a passion in something else, then it's great to just go for it, and that you have that opportunity.
And also, I just wanted to say something really quick. I know, like, for even in construction, like anyone that with any kind of civil degree with any emphasis, or even environmental, as Ashley's going into construction, people like in the industry really like that and want more diversity, like want people with different backgrounds, because it brings something new to the table. And like, I know not everyone wants the emphasis in construction, and so, but anyone with a different emphasis is still has a possibility to work in construction, and that's desired in the industry, and something that, there's more opportunity for you guys as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that with the degree, I feel like you really are just saying that you are an intelligent person who survived an engineering major in college, and that they like that you bring that to the table. So I totally agree. But yes, with that thought, I think that those are all the questions, and I think that we're out of time. So I just want to say thank you so much, everybody, for joining me to have this discussion about civil engineering and environmental engineering, and for kind of letting everybody know about the different opportunities everybody has within, and the different kind of classes and the resources USC provides, and all of the career opportunities. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Awesome. And we're back. I know at the beginning we kind of touched on like not knowing, like some people are super set on what they're going to study, and some people are like more fluid with their choices. I was wondering what your path was, Chris. Were you like set on civil from a young age, or how'd you get into it?
As a wee little lad, from a young age, from a four-year-old
Yeah.
Chris.
I'm thinking specifically of like Nick, who's another VSA, because he like knew he wanted to be a mechanical engineer at like age 4.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I know that he always had a passion for roller coasters, right? And I feel like that kind
Yeah.
of turned into mechanical
Mhm.
engineering, which is very cool. I would say that I also, for interesting enough, for a while, I thought I was gonna maybe do computer science and video game design when I was younger. But
Huh.
then I kind of grew a passion for actually from like art history in high school for like buildings and architecture. But I always had more kind of math and science related curriculum and more like aptitude for that. So when I did some research, I found that civil engineering is kind of like the engineering equivalent of architecture in some respects. And then I
Mhm.
found the building science program at USC. Uh, and I like the idea that it was kind of engineering mixed with a little bit of architecture in it, so I could get both like the engineering and the creative side in it. So I found that program to be very like perfect for me. So I actually came into USC and joined that emphasis, and I've stayed with it still as a senior now. So I'm one of the people that found it and liked it and stuck with it. And even though maybe at some points in the middle, I was like, oh, is this exactly what I want to do?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of wavered a little bit. I feel like everybody has those little doubt moments,
Mhm.
but I decided to stick with it. And I'm glad that I did.
That's something that's really interesting. You brought this up, and I think we should highlight it. No one is ever going to like with 100% enthusiasm everything that they're doing all the time.
Mhm.
Did you all feel pressure coming out of high school that was actually your goal?
I mean, I feel like for me, like, I feel for me, like, part of me thinks, like, because I have the plan of medical school in the future, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I don't enjoy every single moment of my medical classes, then I am not meant to be a doctor or something like that. But I've realized that just
Yeah.
sometimes, like, the enjoyment in the class comes down to like, have I heard the information before? Am I like kind of tired today? And it would kind of just depend on like the subject. And I feel like it's about the overall trend and like having like an overall feeling of like being excited about what you're learning. And maybe like some classes aren't quite as interesting as the others, but those like
Yeah.
make you help you understand the more interesting classes.
Exactly. I think that I would totally agree with Emily that there's some particular classes that because we are getting a holistic degree in our major in education, you're going to be taking classes that aren't exactly what you're interested in within it. And those classes, as much as maybe you might not be passionate for them, they are important for you to understand if you want to understand the engineering field that you're getting into. So that's like I said, I totally agree that there's sometimes I kind of was like, oh, I'm not really feeling this class or I don't really
Mhm.
want to do this. But then I was like, okay, but
Yeah.
overall, I want this education. And for that reason, I was able to power through.
I mean, other than telling high school students, relax, you're not supposed to enjoy every minute of every day. How can we help them understand? Because this is something is a journey you're all going through now. Because I just sound like an old man where I'm like, look, suck it up, guys. You just got to get through some stuff, I often share stories about like, every one of my day, like I get questions a lot about, oh, how did you know what you wanted to do? How did you know you wanted to do this? I'm like, I had no idea. And like, things just kind of happen. And oh my God, isn't it the best thing ever what you do? Like some people ask me that. I'm like, no, it's not. Like there's parts that I really don't like. But there's parts that I love. And the whole point is that in the long view, it is the wins outweigh the losses in some stretch. And if it were to start to change it all, then that's where I would start to make changes. But you have to kind of keep track of these things day by day. It's almost like maybe it's almost like looking at the stock market, right? This idea of like if you live and die by the hour or by the day, you're in
Wow,
the
that's like
wrong
so timely because
wrong world.
my dad is helping me get into investing now, so I have the right mindset now.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, when you start to throw some money in, you're like, okay, let's see what happens. Oh my God, I'm up $10. I'm up, what?
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my God,
honestly
I'm down.
really
Oh my God, what
scary.
I
And
gotta
I
get
feel
out of
like
here.
I'm a very like as an engineer, I'm very like math minded. Like I like perfect answers. Things being like I love in math, there's one
Mm.
answer and you either
Mhm.
got it or you don't. And I think like the gray area and like the uncertainty of the stock market's definitely like an interesting place to be.
But that was like my analogy. But this idea of like high school students, like what do they need to hear? Like what what is something that they need to hear that maybe you would have wanted to hear in their time period, like what they're going through now? Like let's say they're seniors, they just applied, or they're maybe they're juniors and they're coming up right now and they're thinking about applying, and they've got all that, they're highly successful students, and they're really focused on doing well. And so a lot of that kind of builds into this idea of like having the right answer, to borrow your analogy
like
there, Emily.
One thing that has always been hard for me is like big projects that I'm just not looking forward to, that I know that I probably won't enjoy most of it, but no needs to get done, especially writing. Like I'm a math-minded person. Writing comes really difficult to me. And I think like breaking it into smaller chunks, I mean, I think everyone says this, but that really does help. Like even just like writing the intro paragraph or creating an outline or something like that, it probably would take like 30 minutes, but if you did that like every day, it would be so much better than just like doing it all at once. And also I would recommend, obviously you can't do this with a paper, but sometimes with assignments that are kind of tedious, not really looking that like forward to, I do them with friends. At the same time, we work like concurrently and like we compare answers as we go. That's a lot more fun because like I'm with all my BME friends and we get to hang out and get the homework done, which is good.
I totally agree. And I would also say, I mean, we already pitched this anyway with the engineering department of Viterbi, but I feel like finding hobbies, aside from also being an engineer, is so important, because as much as it is our career path and our passion, it's important to have other hobbies. And I feel like that's a great way to kind of alleviate some of the stress that comes with being an engineering major. Like recently I've been picking up snowboarding with friends, and I've been doing that the last year. Yeah. And I've really enjoyed kind of learning something that's it's different than what I'm learning in my classes. And I feel like it's a great way to have activities to do outside of a lot of my activities, which are engineering and Viterbi related.
That's a really good point. I think that's probably the thing we should probably end on here today, is that when someone's trying to figure out their major, what they want to do in college, you're not deciding what your life is. You're just deciding kind of like what an area of focus is that may end up becoming, and I use the word may really strongly here, may end up becoming somewhat of a job or maybe a career for somebody. But then at the end of the day, if someone is defining their life by their career, this is not necessarily the best way to go about your life. You know, like your life is made up of so much more than that. Granted, people should enjoy what they do, I think that's the issue, is that, are you supposed to enjoy what you do, or do you receive fulfillment for what you do? And I think those are two very different things. So with that, for high school students and juniors that are out there, bottom line is take a little bit of pressure off yourself. This isn't like choosing some sort of endpoint definition of your life. It's not like you're checking a box and therefore never unchecking that box in the world again. It is an exploration. And as you can tell by the conversation that was just had, students change their mind as they go, and some people go in and out of these different majors, and it happens. And spoiler alert to life, even though we have the degree, it doesn't mean you're locked in on something either. People change careers, people change trajectories in their life quite commonly. And the good news is that as you've gone through this curriculum, and engineering undergraduate degrees are quite malleable, and students that can do lots of different things with them. And so let's not worry too much here, and recognize that what you're really doing is you're training for the opportunities to use that expertise down the road. And what you do with that has a lot of potential. There's a lot of cool things you can do with it. So anyway, with that, is there anything else you guys want to chat about before we wrap this up?
I guess like what you just said reminds me of something my dad used to tell me when I was looking into the college application process. I was really unsure what I wanted to do. I was like, I like math, I like science, I don't know. And my dad was like, well, if you study engineering, you don't have to be an engineer, but studying engineering, if I see that on someone's resume, I'm like, that person knows how to think. That person can probably like you said, like be malleable, fit into other roles. So I think that's a good place to come into engineering too. Like you can study civil because you think that's interesting to you. And you always could like end up being like in marketing or something else. Like you're a flexible person. You learn how to think in college. I think that's important.
Totally. Well, on that note, on that agreement, Chris, we'll wrap that up and let you have the final word there. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we will see you next time with our next episode of Prescriptive Voices. Bye.